Oh. Right, so this video is on the floor because I still don't have a new table come from IKEA yet because all the students bought them, so still on that waiting list, so we'll see how we get on. So in today's video we'll be talking about Elon Musk, the man who owns just a ton of really interesting companies and how these companies are basically built just to disrupt traditional companies and just the status quo on how we look on the world itself. So for those of you who don't know who Elon Musk is, I'll keep it short because there'll only be about one or two of you who actually need to know this. But Elon Musk is a billionaire businessman who just owns a ton of really interesting companies, but started life, I think his first business was Zip2, a piece of software that provided city guides for different cities around the world, I think, or at least where he was located. Anyway, he sold that, made a bunch of money, and then he made X.com, which was an online banking system that was competing against PayPal. And then when the bust happened, the two companies combined together to make PayPal, but just a little bit better, I guess. Right, so with this history out of the way, what companies does he currently own at the moment? So at the moment, there are 6 companies that Elon Musk owns. Those are SpaceX, Tesla, SolarCity, Hyperloop, The Boring Company, and lastly, Neuralink. Each of these companies, am I hitting these right? I think so, it's weird looking at it in the mirror. Each of these companies have been built on the sole basis of disrupting the status quo and traditional business as we know. Now this is what makes Elon Musk a very interesting person, his outlook on how he looks at things. So if we start off at the top, SpaceX. So up until now, the main focus kind of globally has always been NASA, and it's been very community-based government grants on us getting into space. Now, apart from certain aspects like going to the moon, A, B and C, which have accelerated progress, for the most part, it's going to take us forever to get anywhere at all. And his basis on this is to fast track that, get us on the fast track and get moving forward. He has gone against what kind of NASA traditionally stood for, which was everyone coming together and getting people into space. Now, obviously he has privatized that, which isn't ideal, but it's better to be privatized and it happens at some point than it not being privatized and we never get it. Now, in order to make SpaceX commercially viable, is they have started doing Starlink, which is their way of commercializing space, basically. So the idea is to put loads of tiny satellites into space around the globe and to create an internet that everyone can access no matter where in the world you are. No matter where you are, you will always get as good of internet service as if you were in a major city on any planet in the world. And that's done through hundreds of small little satellites based on the current technology that SpaceX has. And then once that's up in the air, you can either sell that space out to internet providers, like if you're in the UK, BT Internet, Sky Internet, etc., or whatever you've got in your local country, own internet providing brand. Tesla. Now obviously everyone knows what Tesla is. It's electric cars. Electric cars traditionally were always laughed at. Oil companies, all that, always laughed at renewables. Everyone hated them, and anyone who was into them didn't have a viable. In comes Tesla, who have now made electric cars probably the sexiest vehicle on the planet. Compared to all other major motoring companies, Tesla is the one everyone knows, Tesla is the one everyone wants, so completely interrupted the vehicle manufacturing business and created a set of cars that there is yet to be any real competition on the market. He took something that was stale, laughed at and didn't really break through, and it's now ahead of everything else in the game. Number 3, SolarCity. So basically SolarCity, I'm not necessarily sure how profitable this one is. This again is another long game type of business, but basically Elon Musk and Tesla and SpaceX took over SolarCity, which is basically a way of integrating PV photovoltaic panels into the slabs that make your rooftop. So basically the idea is once it's fully developed, all buildings will instead of using slate slabs to cover your rooftop, will use SolarCity's photovoltaic panels, which will allow us, which are basically just mini solar panels that completely cover your rooftop and make your house into a renewable energy machine. Traditionally, that's not always been the case. They've always been big, large panels that haven't really been very economical, and at best case scenario take 20 to 30 years to pay back for themselves. This fast tracks that because it starts to become integrated into the buildings themselves, and ideally in the future this is what houses will be made with when they are first erected, so there's no additional costs that are put on to housing residents. Right, fourth one, Hyperloop. Now, Hyperloop is, again, another simple one, is basically how we traditionally move, how we commute from place to place. How can we reinvent that? Basically, what we're doing at the moment just does not work. Everywhere's slowly becoming more congested, and where Hyperloop is currently working at the moment, it is just at a point where it is quicker to run than it is to drive. Now that's just ridiculous. All those fumes from vehicles going up into the sky, contributing to CO2, and basically this is a way to try and amend that. So just through a bit of creative alternative thinking, the idea is that we can, instead of everyone being on one level, moving forward, all crashing into each other, Hyperloop takes us underground where we can move directly from one place to another, and because similar to the underground or the subway, you have multi-layers of where it needs to be. So there's so many less vehicles on each plane, and basically less vehicles means we can travel there faster. And then with the Hyperloop system, which is basically almost like a little shuttle bus that your car gets put into, is you can be from point A to point B in a couple seconds to a couple minutes tops. Number 5, The Boring Company, which also assists with Hyperloop. So basically it's self-fulfilling at this point with all the companies. They start to kind of mold into each other. But The Boring Company is just a way of boring tunnels underground. So this is set up as a new, cheaper, hopefully cheaper way of boring new tunnels so that we can create more of them at a more cost-effective rate. The Boring Company also creates the boring brick, which is made of all the dirt that they excavate, and the idea is it's supposed to be stronger than a traditional brick, and it will only cost 10 pence, which is, I think, roughly about a third to a quarter of the price of a conventional brick. So it would make housing much cheaper moving forward using these bricks, and a bit more sturdy, which is it just starts to fold in on you. And lastly, Neuralink. Now this is the kind of exciting / scary one. This is the one where basically at the moment we're looking traditionally at computers trying to use up most of our workplace. So a lot of people try to interrupt the market that contains human focused work and converting that to AI or some sort of machine usage. Now you see that in the Amazon warehouses, you see that all over the place, where basically they're taking jobs that can be potentially replaced through AI and robotics and taking those jobs and giving it to machines basically. Now the way Neuralink helps is it covers that skill gap. So a lot of jobs moving forward are going to be a lot less manual based and a lot more human focused. And with that, there's a lot of skills that need to be acquired and learned. And basically, there's going to potentially come a point in the future where we need to be doing multiple degrees at a time in order to keep up, which isn't great. So the idea is Neuralink is a way for us to take the Internet of Things, or just the internet completely, and basically implant it. So rather than us, at the moment, we can just Google whatever we need to know. What if we can Google it just by thinking about it and have that response to us like that We now know that piece of knowledge and we can carry on with it. That's what Neuralink's doing. Rather than replacing humans with machines, we are basically replacing people with people who think like machines, I think. Did that make sense? I don't think that made sense. Basically, it's a way for people to keep up with how machines are moving forward. As the only jobs that are left become more technical and human focused, it allows us, even if it's not our initial strength in life, to keep up with the demands of the workplace. So if anyone out there is an entrepreneur and wants to start breaking into a market but doesn't know where to start, basically just think like Elon Musk. Find a market that is still focused a lot on tradition and hasn't really innovated in the last couple of decades, and just hit it hard with the company. A prime example I'd probably say from the Boring Company is the construction industry. Now they're starting to have a bit of an overhaul. JCB are now starting to bring out their own electric diggers and electric haulers, which is fantastic because that will also interrupt construction, especially in congested places like London. Because these vehicles are a lot quieter, potentially they can work later into the nights because there's not as much noise pollution from them. So things like that, you basically just got to find a market where there's not been a lot of innovation and just hit it hard with something. So Solar City, solar panels, okay, they're starting to get a lot more efficient. The photovoltaics is starting to take place over the last couple of years, but there's not been a full drive. Whereas Solar City, yes, okay, they're not the most profitable, but once they've escalated it to a point where you can't really argue, can't really argue not having them, that is when they make their money. This is definitely a long-term solution. And then between all of them, because it's Elon Musk, you know where this is all going to. This is basically every single company is going to help a system while he's on Mars. So you got SpaceX, that's how we get to Mars. That is how we get internet on Mars. Tesla, that is how we drive around on Mars. So we'll have, because obviously there won't be fossil fuels there, we'll need to find another way. Electric cars, electric vehicles taking us around the terrain. Solar City, improved photovoltaics to help power Tesla and anything SpaceX builds on Mars. Hyperloop, or if we go down one, Boring Company, how we potentially get around Mars, especially because you can get things like solar flares and stuff. It might just be an alternative route to being underground, just in during any sort of harsh conditions. Hyperloop to get us through these tunnels, and lastly Neuralink so that we can connect to the internet here and be fully up to date on everything we will ever know in order to escalate our push into the universe itself. That to me is fascinating. That's my takeaway from it. If you want to hit hard and make a company like this, now a lot of them individually might not actually sound that interesting, but it's when you look at how it disrupts the conventional market that gets placed into, you find that it's been desperate for innovation for such a long time. So basically every single one of these companies is like a tiny little Steve Jobs and Apple industry. Every single one is basically the original iPhone. You just need to go find your iPhone. Right, catch you later on.